Hello there, my beautiful friends. Welcome to another video. I'm so grateful that you're here joining me along on this one. I came up with some amazing 5-ingredient dinner ideas that I had to share with you. They're somehow all very flavorful, even though they're only using 5 ingredients. And of course, they're simple to make and great for those looking for some recipes that are more budget inclined. So the recipes I'll be sharing with you today are a broccoli chickpea stir fry, a red curry noodle, a spicy baked rice, and a squash bean soup. After each recipe, I'll be going over some modifications that you can make, and yeah, let's just dive right in. To start this broccoli chickpea stir fry, of course, we gotta chop some broccoli. So I just took the butt end that wasn't looking so great off of the broccoli stalk, but I am keeping the stalk around and going to throw it into this dish. It is so delicious. It adds such a nice layer of crunch to the end of a meal. So keep your broccoli stalks, do not throw them out. After I got the broccoli chopped up and set aside, I'm now mincing 5 to 6 cloves of garlic. You can add less garlic or more garlic depending on your garlic preference. I then opened and rinsed a can of chickpeas. It's up to you if you want to keep the skins on the chickpeas or not. But I got a pan nice and hot with some olive oil and then threw the broccoli in there, allowing it to do its thing for 5 to 7 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm making our sauce. So I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of sugar and 3 tablespoons worth of soy sauce to a bowl. And that's it, that's all. We got sweet and we got salty. An amazing flavor combination. I then threw the garlic into the pot and allowed it to get fragrant for about 30 seconds, adding 1 tablespoon of the sauce, mixing everything together, and then throwing the chickpeas in as well. I'm gonna cover that with a lid and allow it to do its thing for about 3 minutes before adding the rest of the sauce and a splash of water. Mixing everything together, throwing the lid back on, and just allowing the flavors to marinate for a few extra minutes before serving up the rice and our broccoli chickpea mix. You can top this off with some sesame seeds and cilantro if you have it around. I'd also suggest doing some green onion. It's totally up to you. I also cracked some black pepper on top for a little bit of spice. Call me a cheater or not, but it's definitely not necessary for it. But yeah, let's enjoy the montage of the beautiful dish and this amazing mountain. Recipe number 1 done already, and some modifications that I can suggest to you to make is you can use tofu instead of chickpeas, or white beans instead of chickpeas. You could use cauliflower instead of broccoli. You could add ginger, you could add chili, add onion. Obviously, those modifications, you're adding more ingredients to the recipe, but obviously you don't have to make this a 5-ingredient recipe dinner. You can add more as you will to add a bit more flavor. And if you have noodles, you could use noodles instead of rice. I'm not counting rice as an ingredient for this recipe. Call me a cheater if you will, but we all usually have rice on hand and can cook up some rice if we're making a stir fry. Anyways, let's move on to the second recipe. If you hang out and watch my videos often, you know that finally you have convinced me to no longer boil my rice noodles. So here I am soaking my rice noodles in some hot water and allowing them to do its thing while I prep some other stuff. So the same rule applies with this broccoli as it did for the last recipe. Save the stalk. It adds such a lovely crunch to your dish. I heated a pan, added some olive oil along with the broccoli, stirring that all together, ensuring the broccoli was thoroughly coated in the oil, seasoned it with salt, and after a couple minutes, I added a can of coconut milk and 1 tablespoon of curry paste. Feel free to add more curry paste if your heart desires. It just depends how spicy your curry paste is and how spicy you love your dish. I covered it with a lid and allowed it to do its thing while I cooked up some tofu. Season your tofu well, my friends. Tofu needs salt. It's pretty plain otherwise. After 7 to 9 minutes of the curry sauce doing its thing, I added the noodles. covering it with a lid for a few minutes before adding the tofu. And if your noodles are thinner, add your noodles at the very, very end right before serving. But if your noodles are thicker like mine, then the soaking process won't thoroughly cook them, and you need to add them to the heat of the curry to do the final little cook. But yeah, plated myself up a big bowl of it, sprinkled it with some sesame seeds, and thoroughly enjoyed. All right, recipe number 2 already done. Some modifications that I'd make for this one is you could use cauliflower and not broccoli. You could use a curry powder instead of a curry paste, and just make sure that you read the label of the curry paste that you buy, because typically they'll have shrimp paste or some sort of fish sauce inside of them. So just make sure the one that you buy is vegan if you are vegan. You could use a green curry paste instead of a red curry paste. You could have a thicker or thinner noodle. The noodle size is totally up to you. And you could top it off with green onion and cilantro. Before we move on to recipe number 3, I'd like to say a big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. I'm currently in the process of redesigning my website, and I feel like the most difficult part about doing that is trying to gather all of my own footage and all of my own stuff, because it's just scattered amongst different hard drives, and I'm not very organized. But Squarespace makes the actual website building process so simple. You can choose one of their beautiful pre-made templates, play around with it, add a section, take away a section, and also use stock footage as well. You don't have to be a professional photographer or have the perfect photo that you took yourself to have a beautiful website. You can sell your products, book your clients, and do all of the things that you need to do to run a successful business. You can head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/JuliaAyres to get 10% off of your first purchase of a domain or website. Again, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and let's move on to recipe number 3. So for the baked rice dish, I wanted to add a green that was hearty, super nourishing, and a good texture. So that's why I went for curly green kale, but you can do whatever green your heart desires. It really doesn't matter that much. However, I added 2 cups of long grain white rice to a bowl. I simply did this because I didn't have a fine mesh strainer on hand, and it was the easiest mechanism to wash and rinse my rice. I then added it to the pot along with 1 can of diced tomatoes, 2 cups of water, opened a can of chickpeas, just set that aside. Well, I got 2 tablespoons worth of gochujang into the pot along with 1 tablespoon of olive oil and a teaspoon worth of salt. Gochujang is a Korean chili paste, just for anyone that's unaware. I then added the rinsed kale and chickpeas. Make sure you rinse the kale really well before you add it to the pot, because bugs love to hang out in curly kale. I threw the lid on top and then chucked that into the oven at 350 Fahrenheit, which I believe, I'll put the Celsius conversion on screen for you, and cooked it for 40 minutes. When I talk about the modifications for this recipe, I'll also explain a technique to ensure this rice is very fluffy at the end and not flat and hard or overcooked. But yeah, stay tuned for that. It's easier to love when it's you by my side. Shining through the cracks like the first morning light. Feeling like a child through the days and the nights. Living in your arms as years go by. Recipe number 3 is a great one for meal prep or just making something in bulk, so that way you have something to snack on throughout the week. And some modifications that you could do is use brown rice. However, if you do that, you will have to add more water, because brown rice takes a little bit longer to cook and requires a bit more water to soften. So add maybe an extra half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of water. And something that I will mention for this is, Once the recipe has cooked for the amount of time that I suggested, turn off the oven and allow it to sit in the oven. Don't touch it, don't do anything to it for about 10 minutes extra, and that will help the rice fluff up and just become, you know, a lot better tasting. But some more modifications. You could use a different hot sauce. Frank's red hot sauce would be great for this recipe. I would say add about a 1/4 cup to about 1/2 cup, depending on your spice preference. You could use broccoli instead of kale, and you could add more veggies like celery or carrots, some onion, cauliflower, and yeah, let's move on to recipe number 4.
So for this squash bean soup, I got a chunk of pumpkin, but it does not have to be pumpkin. You can do whatever squash your heart desires. It'd be great with a butternut squash, for instance. And I cut the kind of dried ends off and tried my best to peel this pumpkin with this knife, and it was a struggle, I do have to say. You can 100% buy already peeled, chopped squash at the grocery store. You do not have to go through the same struggle that I went. It's up to you and how easy or difficult you want to make this recipe. I then got it into slightly larger than bite-sized pieces, threw that into the pot that I'm going to cook it in, along with a couple cups of water and a good amount of salt. I did not measure it, but a few pinches of salt. Got the lid on there and then threw that onto the stove on medium-high heat for about 15 to 20 minutes. Obviously, it'll cook a lot faster if you cut the pumpkin a lot smaller, but once it's soft, crush it with your spoon, add a can of coconut milk and your favorite curry powder. It does not have to be the same curry powder that I'm using, but I would suggest a warmer spice masala blend, so something with cinnamon and cardamom and clove and a little bit of chili. I added 2 tablespoons worth of it, seasoned it with more salt, added a good splash of water, a can of white beans, and then sprinkled in some kale as well. I had some leftover and I was thinking, oh, I have one more ingredient to add to this soup. What could I do? Something green, something nourishing, aka kale. And then after about 10 minutes, I served myself up a big bowl of this delicious soup. I would say this recipe was actually the simplest one to make, besides the peeling of the pumpkin, but if you serve this to your friends or your family, I swear to you, they'll think that you are an amazing cook that knows what they're doing.
Okay, let's do a little taste test. I've already tasted this so many times, but it is so good. This is probably my favorite simple recipe, like so flavorful, especially when you just have one of your favorite curry powders. This one is like a warming spice masala blend. So, You could also add whatever green. You could do spinach, you could do broccoli, you could do Swiss chard. You could also make this more fun as well. Add some tomatoes to it, add some carrot, fry some onion and garlic to begin with. Like, make it as fancy as you want to, but make it as simple as this as well. This is a winner. This is a winner, especially for the cooler weather with the squash. It's in season. We're ready to enjoy. All right. Cheers, my friends. The only modification that I would make outside of the ones that I already suggested is to use lentils instead of white beans. That would make it a delicious curry. You could use red split lentils or a whole lentil. It just depends the cook time, obviously. So just take that into consideration. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and got inspired to get into the kitchen after some of these recipes. If you try any of them, let me know down in the comments or over on Instagram. I'm not super active on that social media platform. I prefer making long form videos for you, but every once in a while, I check out what you guys are doing over there and also share myself. Anyways, I hope you guys liked this video, and if you could give it a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that, and click that subscribe button. That would make my heart light up. So I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you again so very soon. Mwah! Mwah!